Now, I hope you guys are ready for this because I am about to drop a big Asym tier list video. Now, I have done so much research. I've got nearly 16,000 characters in my notes and probably could have been more, but there was the last few games where I could just talk freely without having to type down things. So, I've played all of these games. Some of them, you're just like, what the hell happened here? What is going on? This is the most cursed fucking genre in video game history, okay? And it's going to be drastically highlighted in this video. And, if you haven't played any of these games, I've done my best to give a brief description about them as well. And this is not going to be like an ordinary tier list. I'm going to showcase some gameplay, then we're going to put it in my own little tier list in the top left corner there. And you can pay attention to where I'm going to place things. So, let's start off with Identity 5. Now, this was created by Behavior and NetEase, two of our favorite developers in video games right now. NetEase, of course, make Marvel Rivals and a bunch of mobile games, and Behavior, Dead by Daylight. Now, despite this game coming out in 2018 and being an almost identical copy, a mobile copy of Dead by Daylight, it still maintains a high viewer count on the esports scene. Reaches a peak of 82,610 viewers in 2025 on esports for a mobile game called Identity 5. It also has a unique art style, sort of similar to, the other Family and Coraline, where they've got the buttons for eyes. Apparently I read there was a lawsuit going on with that, but I couldn't find any details about that. Basically, players take the role of a hunter or a survivor in a 1 versus 4 game. The hunter must hunt and eliminate survivors, typically by strapping them to rocket chairs, and while survivors must evade the hunter and collaborate to open exit gates by decoding cipher machines. Basically, it's like repairing generators and open the exit gates on Dead by Daylight. You have the pallets and the loops as well, just like Dead by Daylight. Some really cool cosmetics in this game, honestly, even though it's a mobile game. I like the design of some of the stuff. Like I said, it's quite a unique design. This is from a Reddit user. Apparently, the game has over 300 million players worldwide. I imagine that's 300 million installs worldwide. But imagine if it does have 300 million players. That would be crazy. And in Japan and China, it is that famous. It actually had crossovers with KFC and McDonald's. So there you go. Now, I played a little bit of Identity 5 way back in the day when I used to stream Dead by Daylight. I don't think it was anything special. It was a mobile game. There was much that you could really do with it. Apparently, you can play it on Microsoft Windows now as well. But apart from the art style, it was extremely repetitive, and it was simply too much like Dead by Daylight to ever try and take it seriously. Of course, on top of that, it is a mobile game, like I said, so for me, it belongs in C tier. I don't think it was a complete failure in the Asym space. It's still a game you can go and install. You can probably have, a few hours of fun time on it. Just with the unique art style alone, I think that offers a placement in C tier, honestly. Now, that's Identity 5. Let's move on to Propnight. So this was created by the biggest fucking scam artist in the gaming industry. Fantastic. Who you all may know from the debauchery of the day before. This was already doomed to fail. Propnight was an online asymmetrical multiplayer survival horror game like a prop hunt style mechanics developed by Fantastic and published by Mitona. I don't know if I'm saying that right. In the game, 4 players have the ability to turn into objects in order to evade the 5th. While it offered some fun moments in gameplay, the game itself was riddled with cheaters and I suppose their own spin on prop hunt as well. We also wanted a prop hunt in DBD. Everybody kept thinking of this, it'd be really cool for DBD to have its own prop hunt. And everyone thought this was the game. This was it, finally. And sadly, it just did not live up to those expectations. And the devs ceased operations after the failed day before scam. This is straight up trash by a scam company and goes straight into the unplayable trash tier. When I played this, it was just really not a fun experience at all. It's just, yeah, it was ridiculous. Like the hitboxes, the jankiness, like I said, the cheaters. It was just so you can't play this game. It's in the unplayable trash tier. It was fucking disgusting to even say for this game to even exist, especially made by the day before scammers. So, moving on to Ghostbusters Spirit Unleashed. So despite what you think about Ulphonic, they always support their games, and Ghostbusters has been a long-going supported game. In a match, the goal for each side is specific. The ghost's aim is to hunt and select at the selected location and avoid being captured, while the Ghostbusters must focus on trapping the ghost as well, with the option of close and rifts and reduce the ghost's chances of success, but must do so before the ghost can fully haunt a location. This is still receiving updates, although the last update was back in January of this year. I think they released a new ghost. This game sadly only has 8 average players on Steam and has a recent peak of 24. So that's quite disgusting. This could be due to the fact that it was an Epic exclusive at first, though, of course, so it could have more players on Epic rather than Steam. Although I'm sure the console lobbies are still, much more populated because there's always more console players around. Which now we can mention the terrible crossplay friends list with that. So they introduced crossplay with one of the anniversary updates. They did like a big relaunch of the game type of thing, and they brought out the Epic Games crossplay friends list, which is the most disgusting and horrible fucking friends list to deal with in any game. You've got to go to a third-party game like Fortnite, or even go to, like, you can't download an Epic Games Store app on your phone and add people. At least you couldn't when I was playing Ghostbusters, which wasn't too long ago. You've got to go and do it on, the app on PC or something along those lines. Or, like I said, load up Fortnite and add people in there if you have Fortnite installed. So there was no easy way to actually add people. And even then, if you did add people on your friends list, and sometimes it wouldn't even appear that they were on your friends list, even though they are. It was quite annoying to deal with. And then on top of that, we also have the moment of joining, actually getting into the match with your friends, and one of you could be on Ghost while he's hunting down your friends. So in that case, you might as well just play a private match. I don't know. It was just it was a weird experience, but overall, I think the game was, relatively fun and enjoyable. However, it can get quite boring after a few hours sessions, so you can't fault the effort in dropping content and events in this game, though, even with the low player count. So overall, I would say this is a C-tier Asym game. I don't think it belongs any higher or lower than that. Okay, now moving on to Resident Evil Resistance. Oh boy, Capcom love to release games that they just simply do not understand what they have at the palm of their hands, because Resident Evil Resistance was one of them, along with Exoprimal. If this game had its own development team and, it was its own game outside of Resident Evil 3 Remake, this really could have been a popular hit, and it already was in the Asym community as well. It involved 4 survivor players competing against a mastermind who can create traps, enemies, and other hazards. Resistance is set during Raccoon City outbreak, featuring some of the characters from Resident Evil 2 and 3. I didn't get to play much of this online, unfortunately. I do remember playing the beta, though, which I did have a good time, but at the time I was playing Dead by Daylight, so I didn't really mess around too much with other Asym games. But, watching gameplay as the Mastermind and Survivors, it gave us a unique Dungeon Master Asym game that, I really wish was, it would be remade into its own game. The Mastermind being able to control his spawned enemies, the Survivor hunting down objectives and fighting to get to the next area as well. Sadly, I heard the game balance was all over the place. Like I said, I wasn't really a part of it all. And, it only had a real year of content put into it. Apparently, you can still find games on PlayStation for this game, though. But I would have loved to have seen a more modern, full crossplay Resident Evil Resistance with battle passes and content being dropped into it with new monsters and everything. I think having that as a game right now is something that the Asym community could really need. Because with the demise of TCM now and Evil Dead's no longer purchasable on digital, there's something that needs to come out to really let us sink our teeth into, Sadly, with the track record of Capcom and PvPvE games, like I said, like Exoprimal, this will never happen. It's like they're just scared to even attempt it. And, they made a game like RE-verse. I don't think I've ever seen anybody play that game. Like, it's just like, I played the beta of that as well, and that was terrible. But Resident Evil Resistance was unique, and it really had wings. It could have went somewhere, and it just never did, because Capcom just don't want to develop PvPvE games or even stick around long for those type of live service games. So overall, for the unique design, the gameplay being fun, and the graphics, it was easily an A-tier Asym experience that deserved more attention from the developers and players. Sadly, it was always doomed to fail because it was just a way to buffer the price of RE3 remake and it having a short campaign. So yeah, that unfortunately is Resident Evil Resistance. I wish we could have seen more of it. Now, moving on to Last Year. Set in a high school in 1996, the game pits 5 classmates against a fiend who can switch between 3 or 4 characters: the giant, the slasher, the spider, and the strangler. Classmates roam the map completing a variety of objectives in order to escape, while the fiend tries to stop them from doing so. This game is just a disaster. It was supposed to get crossovers last year, pun intended, and come to consoles. Unfortunately, it's swapped developers, and it is just stuck in development hell with them running out of funds for the game. I don't believe it has officially cancelled yet, but we'll have to wait and see. But from what I played of the game, it was just not a fun experience at all, and it was an extremely unbalanced mess. D tier for me immediately. Now, moving on to Evolve. And you guys might be sitting there thinking, what the hell is Evolve doing here? Now, for those of you who don't know what Evolve is, this is where it all began, with Turtle Rock Studios and 2K as the publisher. Our very first Asym multiplayer game. Now, I've tried to do some research on this. Evolve did come out before Dead by Daylight. I can't find an Asym game before Evolve, but there probably was some on PS2 and stuff back in the day. But in terms of, like, you know, online multiplayer becoming more mainstream, Evolve was the very first one, without a doubt. The goal was simple for this game. You were hunting and tracking someone playing as the monster, or you could play as the monster and level up your stages by consuming wildlife and running around the edges of the map, trying not to get hunted down too much, or getting early picks on the hunters as well. You know, this game looked and played phenomenal, by the way. I believe it was ahead of its time as well. You know, Asym games were not popular back then, and sadly it died down. Probably because people just weren't familiar with the concept that much, you know. Asym games didn't really become popular until Dead by Daylight, so, which was like, oh, even DBD wasn't that popular when it first came out. So, you know, you're talking like 4 years, really, before Asym games became popular after Evolve came out. So 2K even attempted to go to a free-to-play model for this game, and basically called it Evolve Stage 2. But with a free-to-play model, it ruined the pricing of DLC and became a microtransaction nightmare that simply gave everybody a sour taste in their mouths. I was there day one for Evolve launching. The gameplay was extremely memorable for me. You know, terrifying as the hunter going after the monster and being the monster was an exhilarating experience, honestly, to say the least. Not to mention the graphics and visuals of this game being AAA to this day, still one of the best looking Asym games around, honestly. You just really can't play it now, unfortunately. This is one of those games that, again, you wish you could come back with crossplay, battle passes, balance changes, updates, and new maps and everything. But apparently in late July 2022, the multiplayer servers for Evolve Stage 2 became re-enabled. And later in October 2022, 2K Games acknowledged the game's revival by re-enabling the daily login bonuses as well, and distributing free Steam keys to members of the Evolve Reunited Discord server. I couldn't find if you could still play this game online at all. I would have to literally load it up on my Xbox and try it for myself. I doubt I'd even find a game, but you know, after saying all that, the potential was there. It was the OG Asym to me, and you know, it was just so memorable. It was so fun. The character designs, the weapon mechanics, you know, all the different abilities, and just the way it was set. It was sort of like Predator Hunting Grounds, like before Predator Hunting Grounds base. It was so sort of similar like that, you know, going to hunt down a monster. So for me, it just has not been replicated since then properly, and it is going to be A tier, definitely. Evolve was massively underrated, and it really deserved more than it got. Now, moving on to Home Sweet Home Survive. Now, for those of you who don't know, Home Sweet Home Survive was an asymmetrical survivor horror game where one specter hunted 4 survivors in an arena. You know, this could be like an old hospital type of area and stuff. You know, the art style was pretty cool on this, but this game was officially discontinued, with services ending on September 1st, 2024. This game was interesting. I played a few games with my buddy Con on this. I remember it being some unbalanced garbage that just never appealed to me at all, though. You know, we played quite a few games, like quite a few hours of this game, and it was just like, There's nothing unique. There was nothing new brought to the table. It was even worse because it was just an unbalanced mess. Like, the loops were just extremely strong, and then the Spectre was also extremely strong. Like, it was awful. It was a really bad experience, and this goes straight into the unplayable trash tier. It's where it belongs. Moving on to Death Garden. Now, in this fast-paced survival title, one unstoppable hunter must track down and kill scavengers who are desperately trying to escape their tormentor's grasp. Nimble scavengers must stealthily explore the Death Garden, open together, and deliver enough blood to open their exits to get out alive. This is Behavior's attempt at creating another game outside of DBD that just flopped fucking massively. I played about 2 games of this game. I bought it on Steam and everything, and I've just thought, what the fuck is this shit? I literally just sat there, I was like, what the hell is this? And just never played it again. Suffice to say that Behavior doesn't know how to make anything successful outside of Dead by Daylight. Honestly, that game must be the biggest fluke in gaming history for a development team. Even with Death Guard and getting the Terminator crossover, it wasn't enough for the game to survive, and it just did not reach any kind of peak in gaming worth mentioning at all. Unplayable fucking trash tier. Next, we're looking at Predator Hunting Grounds, another hit from Ilphonic, if you want to call it a hit, that recently got brought back from the dead. You know, it received more DLC. They brought the game back. They even got a new Predator in the game recently as well. It's still going strong with crossplay and everything now implemented into the game. Again, it's the fucking terrible Epic Friends list thing, but, you know, it is what it is. The game really makes you feel like you're in the original 1987 movie, though. You know, even having Dutch with Arnie himself doing the voice, you know, it doesn't get any bigger than that for Predator fans. And, you know, now when this game first come out, it was a horrible mess. The graphics were like something from a fucking PS2 title, and the mechanics were janky. Like, not a lot of people really like the game. But, you know, it's gotten, because of the surge of Asym popularity from newer games like Evil Dead, TCM, Dead by Daylight still going on, of course, and Killer Clowns, you know, with the surge of popularity of Asym games and that genre now, more people getting on board with these. You know, some people have got, like, really became fans of the genre just because of TCM alone. They're checking out games like this now, so, you know, they're kind of thriving at the moment, but, you know, the problem is with Predator, you know, it is extremely repetitive. At least playing as the humans, you know, as playing as the guys going to hunt down the Predator and doing their missions and stuff. It gets really repetitive doing stuff like that, while the Predator's trying to get them. So I never played as the Predator in that yet, but I did play a lot as the humans, and, you know, I thought it was, you know, relatively fun for a few hours. You know, the Predator itself, you know, I've only seen gameplay of the Predator. Looks relatively fun. You know, you're running around in the trees and stuff. Sort of similar to Evolve, but just doesn't quite hit that mark that Evolve did. Unfortunately for me, though, it is a C tier Asym experience just for the repetitiveness that it has. And of course, Asyms are all repetitive, but you know, this one, it just kind of gets dulled down a lot with the gameplay of, like, okay, we're doing this again. Like, you know, you're fighting against AI as well, which is just kind of boring. Again, it's got a lot of progression tied to it, though. There's a lot of cool outfits and stuff you can unlock in Predator Hunting Grounds. And I said, it's there for a good couple of hour session of fun, and then that's it. Then you're kind of done. It's not a game that you're going to sit there and grind 4 or 5 hours a day like others, but it's not designed like that at all. So yeah, just overall, I think it's a C tier Asym experience just for the graphics and the replayability factor and stuff. Moving on to Level 0. Now, this one I streamed about a year ago. You might remember that stream. It was, you know, you can probably find it on my channel. I'll leave a link down below if you want to watch Level 0. You're going to see some gameplay. And anyway, it was a unique take on the Asym games. You know, usually it would be like one power roll versus multiple humans. Instead, this was an extraction shooter mixed with an Asym game where, you know, you would try and get some loot before the monster got you or the enemy team got you as well. So you were going up against multiple teams as well as a monster, so you all fighting each other. It's an interesting concept. But Level 0 Extraction, you know, it basically was a tactical extraction shooter meets immersive survival horror. Players rival mercenaries fighting for loot And while I thought the concept was a good idea, the simple fact is the game itself was just really horrible to play. It was way too dark, and I know it's meant to be a horror game, you know, you're not meant to see stuff, and you're meant to use your glow sticks and whatnot and really make the atmosphere yourself, but in terms of just like not knowing what the fuck is going on or where to go or anything like that, it's just really, you know, you would just die sometimes and no idea why. Like it was, you know, there was moments, I had some good games on there. I went in there with nothing and came out with a shit ton of loot because I beat somebody to death, or like got a kill with a knife, stole all of his loot and got out through an elevator or whatever. But from memory, it's just not a great experience whatsoever, and it just was not fun. So this goes straight into Unplayable Trash tier. Apparently you can still pick the game up on Steam though and check it out for yourself, but yeah, it's just not for me. Now, moving on to Killer Klowns from Outer Space, another hit from Ilphonic and TerraVision, this time with some damn clowns from outer space. This is another somewhat unique take on the Asym genre, you know, 3 clowns versus 7 humans. Really big lobbies, you know, 10 people in a lobby, that's a lot to fill, and quite quite optimistic, to be honest. I feel like the 3 versus 7 was already a big red flag before this game come out. Like, you know, it was already Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Not a lot of people knew about that movie in particular, or the franchise in general. It definitely was, you know, quite popular when the game come out. You know, apparently they're doing like a new movie or a new TV show. I don't know. There's some new stuff coming out for Killer Clowns. I've also seen a big spike in like collectibles and stuff for Killer Clowns as well now. So it's starting to kind of creep its way in there, you know, as popularity goes. Now, like I said, 3 clowns versus 7 humans. That's 10 people to fill a lobby up. Yeah. You can kind of see where I'm going with that. It was a huge problem. Now, for those of you who don't know what Killer Clowns is or what the gameplay is like, the humans have several means of escaping, being able to open a bridge, you know, use a portal machine, repair a boat, or use a bunker to escape. Now, you've got to go find these items around the map. You know, for example, the portal machine requires 2 spark plugs, the bunker requires gas and a key card. You know, you need a key to open the bridge. The boat requires a spark plug and some gas as well. So, you know, there's loads of different things you can do here, which really doesn't make the game feel repetitive at all, because you can always go and do something else. The clown's objective is to hunt down the humans and kill the humans who can also fight back. So it's a good combat asym as well. The hitboxes, you know, there's a lot of jank attached to Killer Clowns. That's part of the fun though. Basically, you're trying to go over and like kill a clown, or you're trying to go over there and kill a human, you know. Sometimes the hitboxes just don't add up, and you know the animations play out funny. It's like it's part of the fun though. You know, it's something that you just don't really want to take seriously. They can also cocoon the humans and pick up cotton candy cocoons, sorry, on the ground. So these are the big pink cocoons that you'll find everywhere. You go and take them to the cocoon machines. They'll spawn lackeys for you, which are like little AI lackey bot things that move around, and they will alert you to a human's presence as well, or they'll jump on them as well and alert you to the human's presence there as well. So there's different objectives for the clowns. There's different classes you can play as well for the clowns. We'll get to that in a minute. As well as another way for the humans to escape is when the clown apocalypse starts. So there is a timer. Once the timer runs out, then the humans can escape by the Terenzi Bros truck smashing through the wall. They have a minute to get there, or 30 seconds to get there, sorry. So, you know, there's some really cool concept ideas here in this game. And, you know, a lot of people said it's really unbalanced. You know, this side's too powerful, that side's too powerful, this weapon's too powerful, that weapon's too powerful. At the end of the day, it's a funny, jank asym game that you can enjoy for multiple hours. You don't get bored. There's a lot of progression tied to it as well. Another mean as well for the clowns to kill the humans. There is like, I think 4 different cocoon stations, so you've got to hook like 16 cocoons in total. And what they will do is then start the clown apocalypse earlier, which will wipe out everybody on the entire map, or the humans need to fend for themselves. They've only got a minute to escape through any of the other objectives that I have mentioned earlier. Now, like I said, this is one of the most fun and ridiculous asym games you can play right now, and is currently about to get its anniversary update. So And there's a big update coming out with a lot more unlockables and stuff and balance changes coming out. So that's something to look forward to. It has full crossplay as well. Again, with the botch Epic Games friends list system, unfortunately. Visually, it does look pretty good. It definitely could have looked a lot better. And sadly, it does not have the best player count. However, though, with the new update and the failure of TCM, a lot more people have been jumping into Clowns, just to have a fun time, to scratch that itch of an Asym game. Because it's the closest thing to TCM, I guess, because of the 3 versus 7, whereas TCM was, 3 versus 4. Sadly, I think the price of the game was just way too much for what it was. And, with some really bad updates and promised content being removed from the game, like the clown traps, the perk system as well was removed. It really fell below people's expectations. They didn't add any new weapons either. No new weapons have came to the game since it come out almost a year ago. Like I said, we're coming up to its anniversary on June 4th, I think it is, or June 5th. And classes as well. No new classes have been added to the game. And yeah, a perk system completely removed out of the game. It's just so disappointing. However, it is still a fun experience with a lot of progression and unlockable content. If you guys picked it up now, you could probably find a game with quite a few people in it. Run the same game with them. You'll swap between clowns and humans. You can choose a preferred role, but that doesn't always necessarily work. Sometimes you will just be forced to play a certain role depending on what the player or what the game needs. So, if you did jump in, I do recommend it. It is a good Asym game. I would highly recommend if you are looking for a new Asym game out after TCM's demise. Killer Clowns could be it. You'll definitely have some fun with that. So yeah, for me, it's definitely an A tier Asym game for sure. It would be S tier, but with all the problems I mentioned, honestly, I think it doesn't belong any higher than that. Now let's talk about Friday the 13th for the game. Another IllFonic game. So how many IllFonic games we had in this list? 4. It's they're kind of stapling themselves in the horror Asym community. This time partnered with everyone's favorite developers, publishers. Sorry, Gun. So this is similar gameplay to Killer Clowns. The game is an asymmetrical multiplayer video game with up to 8 people able to play in one game. One player controls Jason Voorhees, while the remaining players control camp counselors at Crystal Lake. There's also other maps in the game as well. A player may also take control of Tommy Jarvis, who becomes playable with certain conditions are met, and Tommy shows up with a shotgun. You can kill Jason basically as well. There's a lot of cool things going on with that. Jason has heightened hearing and vision, with him being able to teleport anywhere the player wants, and the objective of the counselors is to escape from the camp or survive until time runs out on the session, while Jason's objective is to kill all the remaining players as well. Jason may also be defeated with an epic win condition that requires teamwork and is difficult to perform as well. Now, I've never gotten into F13, so it's hard for me to judge it on this as an Asym game. I played a little bit of it when it went on like Games with Gold years ago, but it was just a buggy mess for me. However, from watching Slash and Cast play the game a lot on their streams and stuff, looks like a really fun time. I really enjoy watching it, and it's visually pleasing and all that good stuff. It does hit the mark of an Asym game, and a lot of people are really sort of dedicated to this game and how good it was. And I feel like it'd be an insult to anybody watching this if I pretended that I would know and shit all over this game or whatever. But from what I've seen in the hours that I've put into Killer Clowns as well, and seeing all the gameplay from streams, I've got to put it in S tier. I really do. I recently watched the Friday the 13th movies. I watched the first 5 at least. And just watching the gameplay itself, and even though the 2 or 3 hours that I put into the game myself weren't the best experience, I think from what I saw, it was easily like a really fun Asym game that belonged in S tier. Because if that game does come back, or even a modernized version of Friday the 13th, the game is an Asym game, and I can see the appeal now to what I could back then, because back then I was playing DVD, and I was like, again, I didn't want to really move away from Dead by Daylight, seeing all these other Asym games. But but it actually looked like a more polished version of Killer Klowns. And because I like Killer Klowns, and Killer Klowns is an A tier, and Friday the 13th, you know, is definitely a bigger hitter there, and you've got Jason and all the camp counselors, and, you know, it just looks like a fun, wacky time as well. So for me, I definitely think it belongs in S tier for that. And for those reasons, and that's the best opinion I can give on Friday the 13th, just from the lack of game time, because I wish I was a part of that and played it a lot more. But just from the hours of streams, like I said, watching Slash and Cast play it a lot, it does look like a really fun game. So putting that in S tier. Now. This is the one. Evil Dead the game. Where do we begin? Where do we where do you even start with Evil Dead the game? This was the most promising and exciting Asym game to ever come into the gaming scene. It really was. We had Saber Interactive, who had great reputation with World War Z, by the way. They still fucking update World War Z. It's still going. And it's a great game, World War Z. You have a ton of fun on that game. And I recommend you try World War Z if you haven't already. If you like a zombie game, sort of like Left 4 Dead, World War Z will scratch that itch for you. It's a great game, honestly. However, I would hold off on giving Saber any money, and I'm about to tell you why. You know, they even created a whole new AAA studio at Saber Madrid to create this game. We had developers from DICE and Rocksteady who worked on Arkham Knight work on this game. That's why it was, the visuals were fucking out of this world. Like, it had some big heavy hitters here. Along with most of the original Evil Dead cast as well. You got Bruce Campbell there, you've got Dana De Lorenzo as Kelly, you've got Ray Santiago as Pablo, you got Lucy Lawless as Ruby as well. Even OG cast members from the original Evil Dead movies came into this game to do their voices, like for Scotty, for example, and Cheryl. You know, you got all the the actors there. They did everything right on that side of the game. But like I said, the visuals for this game are just something we've just not seen in any other Asym game out there at all. Not even close. I was arguing with somebody on Twitter or X, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I still call it Twitter because that's what it is, okay? That's what it is. Fuck what Elon Musk says, that's what it is. Now, I had an argument with someone that said TCM looked better than Evil Dead. Now, TCM does look like it is visually appealing, but I'm sorry, there's no way in this fucking, on this earth, that TCM looked better than Evil Dead with the snow weather, the rain, the blood rain, all like the reflection, everything on the Evil Dead the game just shit all over Texas. And that's not saying Texas looks bad, but that's just how good Evil Dead the game looked with the lighting and everything, and the gore. It was phenomenal. Okay, and that's not me shilling for the game at all. I'm just like, you've got to be delusional to think that Texas looked better than Evil Dead. And to even go to the lengths of sending a Blender render, which, if you don't know what Blender is, it's a 3D modeling program. I sent a screenshot in-game of an Evil Dead character. This person sent me a picture of a Blender render, which has way more realistic development and stuff of a TCM model, and thought that was the same as in-game. It's really not. Not even close. And they said that's why they look so much better. But yeah, nice try. Nice try for that. But yeah. So this game, moving on, you know, they did everything right with all of that. Now for the gameplay, though, you know, there was one person controlling the Kandarian demon, playing the dungeon master role, sort of similar to Resident Evil Resistance, where you'd spawn down your enemies. You know, you'd spawn your deadites, you'd spawn your elites there, your basic units, your elites there, and you'd have your boss unit as well. You'd also set down traps. You'd also have your own ability as well, depending on what demon you were playing. For example, Ball would automatically set down traps next to him and get like a speed boost and stuff. Henrietta, for example, would buff up the balance bar of the enemies so they couldn't be stunned. You know, there was loads of stuff like that was going on, and Elagos had a power possession mechanic where he could power possess his elites and his basic units to basically not cost any of the energy that would be required normally to possess something. So, you know, there was a lot of different stuff going on there, which was really unique in terms of all the demons sort of playing differently there. But, you know, it's that unique that we've never seen anything like this, really, where you are basically controlling Sam Raimi, the director, as a camera, moving around and then spawning things. You know, it's just so good. It's so well done. And the fact is, like, to come up with that idea and put it into an Asym game speaks for itself, really. Now, the humans also had their own unique abilities as well. You know, they had their own classes. They could create their own builds. You could create your own build on Demon as well, by the way. You had the prestige system where you could get more points to then even develop your builds even further there. So not only that, but it had some really great cosmetics attached to that, so you could be, you know, changing in and out of all the different characters there. Now, the objective for the demon was to kill the humans by spawning in enemies, possessing them, spawning their boss units, setting down traps, spiking the fear levels, and gaining levels to become a more powerful demon. Every demon had their own abilities, like I said. So the human's objective was relatively simple. You'd go around, you'd loot. It was sort of like a battle royale where you'd, you know, find different loot and weapons on the floor. Sometimes you could have a character that would spawn with a weapon as well, which was always very helpful. You'd pick up Shem's Colas, which would heal you as well, heal the team. Like I said, you had different classes. You had a leader, you had a warrior, a hunter, and a support character. So, you know, there was some really different roles. If you got bored of playing one role, this was the beauty of the game. It wasn't that repetitive because you could swap roles and have a sort of different play style. You know, that's why I really enjoyed it. So, and the objectives of the humans was to collect 3 pieces of the map and then go and collect the Kandarian dagger, which was sort of a King of the Hill situation, as well as the lost pages. And then it would all build up to this big battle of, at the last, you know, banishing the Dark Ones. So, you know, there'd be the Dark Ones circling around the Necronomicon. You then banish the Dark Ones, and then the ritual would begin to banish the demon. And this is where the balance really took a hold of the game, and everything became about a 2-minute DPS check, where the humans had to defend the Necronomicon against the demon that would destroy it. And this is what ruined the game's overall experience, unfortunately. You know, the demon could struggle to maintain pressure throughout the game, and sometimes they didn't really become powerful until the book phase. I know people like to take the piss out of me saying that. Book phase. I say a book phase. Now, like I said, that was a problem about the game because everything became about that phase. Your builds became about that phase. You know, there was some really fun builds you could do on Survivor, but you just could not play them because of the book phase, because they just didn't work. You know, you needed to be hitting as much damage as possible to stop that demon destroying the Necronomicon, and unfortunately that led to the game becoming repetitive. So because of the balance, and it ruined the game's uniqueness and flavor of the classes as well. That's how I saw it in anyways. It did, you know, there was games where it was, the problem was the balancing was what fucked this game over more than anything. You know, the infinite finishes spam that you could do with Survivor to then not take any damage, iframes into oblivion. There's so much stuff wrong with it. So not only the balance was the issue, but Saber's silence between updates was fucking atrocious. Like, they would not talk to the player base for months on end. And it's not like this game didn't have a lot of players. This game, at launch, had more viewers than any other Asym game has had at launch. You know, this had like nearly, I think it was 139,000 viewers on Twitch, if not more. I can't remember what TCM's was, but, you know, just off the top of my head, like, that was extremely popular. It had a lot of players as well. Sadly, it released on Epic Games Store as an exclusive there. So Steam, it didn't really pick up many players, unfortunately, which probably would have been a much better and bigger platform for it to play on, as well as I think it was on last gen as well, so Xbox One and PS4, they could not play on the crossplay side of things. However, speaking of crossplay, it did have a really good crossplay system. You just added people, and that was it. It worked. Didn't have to do shitty Epic Games friends list or anything like that. It's easily got one of the simplest and most like basic crossplay systems I've ever seen, and a friends list so you can see who's online and everything. Like the most simple shit. You can't even get that in Asym games that are coming out today. It fucking baffles me. Here's a lobby code. Fuck off. What are you doing? Anyway, sadly, you can no longer buy digital copies of Evil Dead the game. That's just been recently delisted. But you can pick up a physical copy and still play it. So you can go to a CEX if you're in the UK, or GameStop in the US or whatever. I'm pretty sure you can pick up a copy there and bring it home and play it right now if you wanted to. The servers are still on, so you should be able to find a game, and people are still actively playing this game. It also offers 8 single-player missions, of course, if you don't want to play online. You can also play against bots as well if you want to do that and just experience an Evil Dead. The 8 single-player missions originally actually unlocked outfits, but now you just load up the game and you've got the outfits immediately. Also, from completing the missions, you get access to listen to the Nobi's tapes to hear the lore behind the game about how Professor Nobi tried to summon Ash, but accidentally summoned everybody who knew who Ash was, basically, or fought alongside him, and then they all got brought together to banish the demons. So it's got some interesting lore behind the game as well. The sad thing is, Saber was sitting on an absolute fucking gold mine with this game. Another Asym game that sadly, due to development fumbles in Tim Willits and his Legal Eagles, left the players feeling angry and frustrated with the lack of balance, cosmetics, communication, and just, so much more, along with the Battle Royale game mode that just not one fucking single person asked for. They added a Battle Royale game mode instead of putting their time, energy, and resources into the actual core gameplay. And the sad thing is, when they brought out Splatter Royale, it then took the place at the #1 spot of game modes. So when people did come to the game or just pick this game up, they're like, oh, okay, so Splatter Royale's the first game mode. That must be the main game mode. They play it and like, what the fuck is this? And then turn the game off and never play it again. It was such a bad decision. I don't know what they were doing with that, but fuck me, man. Like, common sense, Saber. Like, what are you doing? You focus all your energy into your main game and make it the best you can. If you can't make it the best you can, fucking get out of there. Another downside of this game was the 7 million IP holders that they had to do and go through on all the red tape in order to make balance changes, prestige systems, gameplay tweaks, introduce new content. Yeah, it was doomed to fail because of the IP holders and Saber's just complete fucking lack of hands-on mentality of creating a game. As Tim Willits said, this is the CEO of Saber, or whoever the fuck he is, at Saber. Saber's a big company. They make a lot of horror games now, and they've just done Space Marine 2. You guys can see how good that game is, right? So they have the problem is with this game's life cycle is it went from the AAA studio to then Saber US, which just did not have the capabilities of optimizing content on the newer hardware systems like the Series X and the PS5, because it was such not a demanding game, but the visuals and everything, they had to get that spot on with the architecture of the Series X and the PS5. So Saber US weren't capable of that because they weren't AAA developers like at Saber Madrid. So anybody that thought this game was coming back was probably very delusional in thinking that, because they simply didn't have the means. They didn't have the talent because they took it away from the studio that had the talent, and that studio is currently working on Unreal Engine 5 games and stuff right now. So, yeah, unfortunately, it'll never come back. Even if somebody else took over this game, it would have to be at the same level of development experience, and it just would not happen. Unfortunately, you'd have to recreate this game from scratch, unless somehow they miraculously got Saber Madrid to work on it again. On the plus side of this game, though, the DLC was priced fairly as well. You got a lot for your money, new characters and demons, along with cosmetics in a bundle as well. But after saying all the negative stuff, with the core gameplay is so much fun. Trust me, the fighting and everything is just so much fun on this game. The visuals, the OG voice acting, the OG cast coming in to do the voice acting is incredible. And for me, this is easily the best Asym game ever created, despite all of the flaws I've mentioned. And this is not a biased opinion either. You know, it's simply one of the one above all of Asym games, and its players truly deserve better from the developers and the IP holders. They really did. We deserve so much better. We never got fucking Chet in the game. Yeah, it's disappointing, but you know, I would not have met so many amazing people or had any success on YouTube without this game, and it'll forever be a big, important moment in my life. And I was lucky enough to enjoy this game from beginning to end, from the beta days all the way up to them announcing they weren't doing any more content. So, yeah, for me, it is the one above all Asym game, and it always will be until another Evil Dead Asym game comes out, and I'm pretty sure it might do better because now the IP holders is just one studio, which is Studio Canal, and that's it. Although you've got Army of Darkness, which is owned by MGM still, I think, or Lionsgate, same company, right? And that's it. You know, then that's two IP holders you've got to deal with. Versus realistically, there was about 5 IP holders, I think, for this game. So yeah, it was a bit of a mess and a lot of red tape there, but it had so much potential. You know, that I was even in talks with a developer who was actively working on the game. He was like the lead 3D artist guy or whatever, who was actively, you know, making decisions on what to bring to the game. And I was talking to him. You know, we actually try to get Stranger Things into the game. They even had meetings about it and everything. You know, it had potential to have crossovers. Like it could fit into the game. If it could fit into the game, they could have it. You know, that. But again, there's just too much red tape, and that's the ultimate demise of the game. But the core gameplay, the visuals, the OG cast, voice acting, and everything is why it is the one above all Asym game. And now, moving on to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What a fucking shit show this was. Now, I played Texas again from the beta up until sometime late last year. I've never seen such a fucking fumble in my life of a game like, I just talked about all that with Evil Dead. Just imagine that, but like tenfold. Like, this is atrocious from what I've seen from a development standpoint of, you know, trying to make a game live service and, you know, keeping people playing the game and all that stuff. It's the biggest fucking cash grab as well I've ever seen. Now, let's start. So, TCM, for those of you who don't know, was a 3 versus 4 Asym game. I can say it was now because they've actively stopped doing development on it. They're going to swap to peer-to-peer servers and all this shit that's going on with it. So let's start from the beginning. The beta days were great. It was a lot of fun. There was no perks in the game. You randomly got put on either side. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on with the beta that was just made the game fun and enjoyable and really capture the Texas Chainsaw Massacre atmosphere. And, you know, let's not take that away from the game and the original developers, because, you know, this shifted developers like Evil Dead before that, like Friday the 13th before that. You know, the fucking changing developers like on on a whim here. So the game came out, everybody was enjoying it. You know, it had a lot of players. It was out on Game Pass as well when it came out. So, you know, they had like 4 million players on an Asym game, which was huge. It really was. You know, the game come out, everybody's enjoying it. Then the meta was discovered with perks. This is when things got, you know, really bothersome with the game, if that's the right word. Unfortunately, you know, we had, you know, infinite stunning going on. We had Valve in Basement on Slaughterhouse. You know, there was only 3 maps with the game come out as well. It was like Family House, Gas Station, and Slaughterhouse. That was it. So for a multiplayer game, full price, by the way, $40 or whatever it was when it come out. Of course, it was on Game Pass. So this was the annoying thing. Actually, you know what? We'll talk about that now. Actually, the toxic positivity. So with all these problems that I mentioned, of course, they did updates about this and try to fix the balancing. You know, they move things here and there. If you gave any bad opinion about what they, like, if you disliked a balance change they did or anything like that, you'd have these fucking toxic positivity white knights coming out of the woodwork, out of the shadows, like they're thinking there's some Assassin's Creed Brotherhood shit. coming into your comment section like, what are you talking about? This is fucking great. You know, you play the game on Game Pass, you got it for free. Like, that mentality alone is one of the things that killed this game, because of them loving those mediocre updates, they did not push the developers to fucking do better or actually make updates that worked. Because so many updates came to this game, broke the game, fucking made it crash, all this and that going on. It was an abysmal shit show of balancing and bugs that just fucking ruined this game. And again, you know, swapping developers. Originally it was Sumo. Now Sumo, can't take away from Sumo Nottingham. I think they did a pretty good job with the game itself, and, you know, releasing the game. It was definitely unfinished. You know, it probably needed like another half a year of polishing, but overall, the atmosphere, the graphics, like I said before, you know, it's probably second to Evil Dead on the best looking Asym games out there. Along with Evolve as well, I would say, but along with the graphics and, you know, the gameplay and capturing the atmosphere of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre like it's supposed to, they hit it out of the ballpark. Like, they fucking smashed it. They did such a good job with that. But the problem is we look at Gun here and the publisher and Mr. Matt Shotter here with that fucking terrible skill tree system. And, you know, when the game came out, a lot of the perks didn't even work. Like the aura reading perks, like you were supposed to see Grandpa when you opened a door, when he screamed or whatever, or, you know, there was just things like that just didn't work. And it left you guessing, like, and you were stuck into a meta of just playing like the same 3 perks all the time, at least on the human side, on the survivor side. You were just stuck like, okay, does this perk work? I guess I'm just gonna have to run these 3 because I don't know if this perk works or that perk works. And it was just that was the problem with the game's early days. And then we also had the hackers on top of that, and then they cut away the PC from crossplay for like a whole ass month, just because there was hackers, and they refused to put an easy anti-cheat on the Xbox version on PC, and that just ruined the experience there. Anyway, going back to the gameplay itself, it was really fun. So you had the 4 victims. You could, you know, run. You spawned in the basement. You had gathered tools to unlock the basement doors. Then you'd go up to like the ground level. There would be different objectives. You could you could open the valve exit. You could open the fuse box exit, or you could then go towards a car battery, turn off the car battery, open up the fence and escape, or you could go towards a go towards the generator. Turn off the electricity and open the gate there as well. And there was, you know, there's some really fun chases, and, you know, there's some really fun chaos with this game that, you know, you cannot replicate in any other Asym game out there, because it is so unique with that. You know, you had ways to fight back on the victim side of things. The family was really fun as well, you know, playing as Leatherface with a chainsaw running around in the basement. I still will never get the sound effect of the chainsaw out of my eardrum. It'll forever live with me while I'm trying to sleep at night. You know, you had all that going on. You had Cook as well, listening out for the victims there, and, you know, it's just all these different play styles with the family side that just made it really fun. And you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, so you said the game was fun. What went wrong with it? And, you know, some things that I've mentioned already, but, you know, we could sit here for another hour and I'll tell you what went wrong with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I could probably still come up with stuff, because there was that much that went wrong with it. The progression system, you only got up to level 99, that was it. There was nothing else for you. Once you reached level 99, there was nothing else for you to do other than just play the game and have fun. You could level up your perks, even though, again, you know, like I mentioned before with the fucking skill trees, this is why I don't really blame Sumo necessarily for the game, because you had people like Matt Shotter at Gun who were like, this is my skill tree, this was my idea, we ain't fucking changing this at all. And yeah, it didn't really get changed. They did a bit of a rework to it, but ultimately it was for them to control the meta a lot more, and half the time those perks didn't fucking work either. And then we had Mr. Wes Keltner there with his mustache, sitting there playing with his fucking Jordans all the time and lying to us, lying to the camera constantly. Oh yeah, we're gonna do this. You know, I've got content made up until 2025, and, you know, all this, and bullshit that used to come out of his mouth. Like, this dude would sit there and say, it's like they didn't want to take our feedback on board. Like, we had genuine questions. He was reading questions out from the community. This Matt guy, he's reading, he's like, about the skill tree. So somebody said, do you not feel like you need to apologize to your player base for the utter shit show of the early days of the game's development, basically after launch? He's like, oh, we don't feel like we need to apologize at all, but if it makes you feel better, sorry. Like, the condescending attitude, the lack of accountability just pissed people off. It pissed me off. I made so many rant videos about this, and I enjoyed the game. Like, I wouldn't make those videos if I didn't enjoy the game, if I wasn't a fan of TCM and all this stuff. It just pissed me off. Like, why people, the people defending them as well. Why are you defending these fucking people? The man is posting pictures of his brand new home gym that he just bought with your money that you've just spent on the game. And now this is another thing that I'm transitioning to. Again, with the money, the pay to win characters. They thought that was a good idea. Pay to win characters. $10 for a character. You could buy Chucky on Dead by Daylight for $5 at the time, and that was a big thing. And Mr. Matt Shotter over here was like, oh, well, Nancy and Thingy is much better than Chucky, and it's worth more money and all this shit. It's like, then they're like, mocap is expensive and time consuming, and all this shit. We've got to pay voice actors and whatnot. That's why you have cosmetics in your game, to fund stuff like that. Not really for us to spend $10 on a character, dude. I wouldn't mind, okay, if the characters were relatively balanced when they come out, but they were plainly obvious pay to win. Danny would like tamper an exit, leave it open for everybody to run out. That was left in the game for 2 months or something, off the top of my head. Does that sound balanced to you, people who haven't played the game? Huh? Somebody that can just tamper an exit and leave it open for pretty much everybody to run out for the rest of the round. They didn't nerf that shit for 2 months, and that's a $10 character. You're gonna tell me that's not pay to win? I'm sure some white knight will come out of the woodwork somewhere and go, what the fuck are you talking about? And then we have Wes, like I mentioned before. This guy is lying straight to everybody on the camera. Oh yeah, we're gonna look at increasing the level cap. We're gonna add in-game currency. That's in the works. We heard nothing for like 9-10 months. Next thing we know, hey, guess what? We're making a new game mode called Rush Week. My Giallo fucking wet fever dream that I had that I wanted to put into a video game, and then, just to live it myself. And there you go. There's my Giallo inspired wet fever dream game mode. Enjoy it. Nobody asked for that. It's a fun game mode, Rush Week. I'll tell you that. The problem with Rush Week is it doesn't belong in TCM. It just not like, it's the same shit that happened with Evil Dead. The developers focusing all their time and energy on another game mode that nobody fucking asked for. Nobody wanted it. Focus on your core gameplay. You need to get your core gameplay and core game mode perfect. Well, not perfect, but close to it. Fix the bugs, fix the balancing, fix this and that. Work on the level increase, work on the currency that you mentioned. Not fucking design a new game modes that nobody's gonna give a shit about when your game gets fucking reaching its demise and you stop making content, which happened literally like, what, 6 months after Rush Week come out? I don't know, when did Rush Week come out? Sometime last year. Yeah, I don't know, 7 months, 8 months. Either way, like, that's it. That's it. TCM's done. It's gone. They're not doing any more content for it. And for them to make, like, I've got a whole video on this, but for them to make a statement and not even thanking their players for the support, but all they did was pat themselves on the back of being like, hey, we did a good job. Stick with us. We're going to make another game. And then you're going to love that game, and we're going to shovel shit down your throat, and you're going to love that as well, and make everything pay to win like it was on this game. We're going to overcharge for cosmetics. We're going to make the most bland-ass fucking color palette shitty cosmetics we can think of and charge you $5 for them. when you look at one of the skins, okay, and I've always said this, so the cosmetic packs, you're like $5. Oh my god, and I get all these recolors. It's literally like a fucking gradient swap. Like they just went like that with a mouse pointer and went, okay, we're just gonna change this. There you go. That's what they did. And then they inflated the price of that skin. If you just bought the skin by itself, you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, this is like a fucking $1.50 skin or $2 because it's that bland and uninspiring. There was no accessories on them. I know it's the 1970s, but there was so many cool fucking inspirations you could take of. And then we had the whole thing, like, we gotta buy fucking 1970s eBay magazines. Like, what? They're buying magazines off eBay to make sure they get the fabric correct. What are you talking about? It's a fucking video game. You try and make things way too realistic and authentic. Why? I know you're a big horror fan and you want to get things right, but come on, it's a fucking video game. You know what denim is, right? You know what denim's meant to look like. Create the fucking textures and put them in the game. Like, holy shit. No. Sorry, I'm dragging Texas out a little bit too long here, but I just want people to understand what a fucking shit show this was. This is just the tip of the iceberg of things that went wrong with this game. And, you know, we talked about the balancing a little bit. You know, there were some things that really ruined the balancing, and I still say to this day, the first, like, 2 months of Texas Chainsaw Massacre were the most fun because it was so chaotic. Both sides were strong together in the fights and everything. You know, I just really enjoyed it back then. They made some really bad changes. They buffed Scout, and which was a family perk that gave them 15% speed boost, and then they took away the debuff that would remove the damage debuff, unfortunately. So they were running around and hitting as much damage as they wanted to for free with Scout, and to me, that led to a lot of boring victim gameplay, unfortunately, because once you were caught, it just felt like you were caught. That was it. I mean, there was obviously a lot of situational stuff, but as things went on, family became the much more stronger role, in my opinion, which led to it being a lot less fun, because I'm going to sit here and say I'm bad at Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I thought I was a really good player along with Con. I'm not egotistical about that. I just thought we were, because when we played family, there was 3 of us against, you know, the 4 bully squad teams that would infinitely stun you and stuff. Like, we went on kill streak wins, like literally 4Ks every single fucking game for like 10 games straight or something. You know, and you know, that was really fun to achieve, but now it was like, it was too easy to do it, and it just became boring, unfortunately. And I just think, although the balance wasn't the issue of this game really dying, it was the developers, ultimately, their decision making, like I said, pay to win garbage added to the game. The pricing of cosmetics, me, the false promises, like I mentioned before. Only 3 maps at launch. Like, this game really needed like another half a year to a year development. But yeah, so that's Texas. That is Gun as well. However, after saying all that, and you guys are going to be really surprised by this, I think it is an S tier asym game, just from those early days. You know, back then it was so fun. The victims, you know, getting the bone scraps, stabbing them, going to stab the grandpa, and, you know, stabbing chickens, just running around, causing chaos, turning the valve off, fighting around the valve, fighting 3 family members around the valve, and just, you know, just back in the day, it was just so much fun. But yeah, it just became a shit show from there on, unfortunately. But because of those early days and the original core gameplay and everything that went on, I believe it is an S tier asym game. And graphically, like I mentioned before, it's like second to Evil Dead. So they really hit it out the ballpark, Sumo, with the atmosphere, the gameplay, and all that stuff. And you gotta really think of that, rather than when the game moved to Black Tower and changed developers, and then it went to a shit show from there, to be honest. It's unfortunate, but again, it is what it is. Now the game's not receiving any more content. Like I said, you can still buy it. It's also swapping back to peer-to-peer servers. So, one person will be the host on the family side more than likely. And that's probably going to remove crossplay from the game as well. So yeah, that was some of the problems with TCM. I don't want to drag it out any further. I could have went on for another hour, but you get the gist of what's wrong with that game. Last but not least, Dead by Daylight. This game's been going on 8 years now, I think. You know what? Okay, like, just to save time, the problem with Dead by Daylight, and this is a game made by Behavior, who we mentioned before. They created Identity 5, they created Death Garden as well. Well, they helped create Identity 5, should I say. NetEase mainly did that. You can't fault DBD for its content. The sustained amount of content pumped into that game is phenomenal. They're doing new things like 2v8 mode and stuff like that. The problem with Dead by Daylight is the core gameplay. I really don't like it anymore. Back then, I did. There was probably a time when I thought the game was really fun. But right now, if I try and play Dead by Daylight, I will not have fun. And that's been, mainly a survivor main. I didn't play a lot of killer. Even though when I played killer, I did somewhat have fun, but it's the most repetitive asym game out of this list, along with Identity 5. You're just repairing gens, you're looping the killer, dropping a pallet, opening the exit gate, and you're out. It doesn't matter if you're going up against a different killer or what, anti-loop killers, range killers, all this shit that's in the game. It doesn't matter any of that. The core gameplay is just not fun. And people will sit and probably lie about that and pretend they think they have fun with Dead by Daylight. But ultimately, DBD just exists because of the content it gets in. No other asym gets that level of content. This gets battle passes, this gets crossovers, and all these cosmetics and everything brought to the game all the time. There's nothing that can top it. But the baffling thing is, it's the core gameplay that lets it down. They have never innovated on it whatsoever. You're still repairing a fucking gen. The game, as I call it, is one button simulator, because there's so many mechanics. You're repairing a generator. For those of you who don't know what Dead by Daylight is, I don't know why you'd be watching this video if you didn't know what Dead by Daylight is, but it's basically 4v1 asym game. You've got all the killers. You've got killers like Michael Myers in there. You've got Freddy. You've got the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. They've got a bunch of original killers like Blight, Nurse, Huntress, Spirit. There's some really cool designs there. I will never fault them on their cosmetics or their killer design or anything like that, or their survivor, although some of the survivors lately look bland as shit, to be honest. They're even getting popular stuff like The Walking Dead soon as well as cosmetics. They've got Resident Evil in there, Nemesis. Like, they've got any horror stuff that you can think of that's pretty much in Dead by Daylight now. And I can't fault them for that. That core gameplay, though, I call it all the time, one button simulator. The problem is with this game is you're repairing gens, okay? The killer side's definitely a lot more fun to play, in my opinion, now, because when I've experienced... This is someone that has 4,500 hours of Dead by Daylight, so I must have had fun at some point. To be honest, I was mainly doing it for content purposes as well, but... you're repairing a gen, you hold them one button, and then you had killers like Legion that put you in mend state, which then you've got to mend yourself holding down the same button. You've got totems to cleanse in case there's a hex totem. Guess what? Same button you've got to hold down. There was nothing innovative with this game. It's so basic. Although basic does work sometimes. Keep it simple, stupid. As I like to say with my thumbnails all the time. But, like, does that sound appealing to you? Sitting there on a generator for like 90 seconds, repairing it, then going to do another one, and then another one. Maybe sometimes you go and get an unhook and help your teammate out. And this is coming from someone who got really good at this game at looping. And again, I'm not tooting my own horn here. That happened. There's just games where I'd run killers for 4 or 5 gens every time. That happens. Very frequently for me towards the end of my DBD career, I guess you can call it that. That was the fun. The fun with these asym games ultimately is interacting with the other side. Dead by Daylight's core mechanics actively make you just not interact with the other side sometimes because you're planted on a generator on the other side of the map to where the killer's chasing that survivor. There's no chaos really in Dead by Daylight. You know, it's people spaced out doing their own thing, and then it's one after the other of taking their turn of having fun. That's it, and that's the problem with it. It'll always be the problem with it. DVD really needed to shake things up, change like the more like this is why people love TCM. This is why people loved Evil Dead and Killer Clowns. The multiple objectives on DVD. All you've got is generators and keys for a hatch, and you can only open the hatch now if there's only one person left or whatever. I don't know what the fuck. Back in the day, you could open up the hatch for like 3 people. It was kind of busted, but or you could open up for 4 people if all the generators were done. So yeah, they've just never innovated their core gameplay mechanics, and that's what's let it down. But other than that, they fucking shine at everything. The balancing is what it is. You know, there's so many perks and stuff in that game now, it's not even worth talking about balancing in Dead by Daylight. But all the cosmetics, battle passes, crossovers, put this game in B tier for me. It's the only B tier Asym I think I have on this list, and I think it belongs there. I don't think it's as fun as Texas. I don't think it's as fun as Killer Clowns or some of the other ones that I've put in A tier here. Mainly because of its core gameplay. It massively just lets it down. And people will sit there and they'll say, you know what? No, DBD's fun. You know, I like sitting on a generator. I mean, that's fine. DBD can be chill. You know, you're just sitting there on a gen and then you go and unhook people, and then you might not be the best looper, but you can have a little bit of a thrill from a chase of a killer as well. But you know, there's just a certain point in Dead by Daylight when they started reworking the maps as well. They started pushing away from the horror scene a lot that I didn't really like. I didn't vibe with it at all. Like, they started brightening the maps up a lot. You know, they bringing in characters like Mr. K-pop man himself, fucking Trickster, that just does not fit into the fucking horror Dead by Daylight scene at all. We have FNAF coming to the game now as well, which to me is like the ultimate sellout for that company to do. But hey, more content, I guess. And it's a game I do revisit here and there, but it's just not a game I'm gonna really sit there and pretend being like, yeah, I find this fun and I'm gonna sit and stream it every day, because that's just not me. I need my brain to do something when I'm playing a video game. You know, I've always become with the idea of like DVD had the potential to really make killers a lot more unique in a way for the survivors to enjoy as well. Listen to it or not if you want. You know, we're done with the tier list. That Dead by Daylight's the last thing, but just for a quick concept idea, like I always said, I really wish the killers had their own objectives to escape from. You know, I think it would make it so much more unique rather than, you know, you could just, it's even like a cosmetic type of thing as well. You know, with Clown, like I always said, instead of generators, there's laughing gas bottles or, you know, whatever around the map, and you've got to really try and shut them off. If you don't shut them off in a certain amount of time, that closes a section of the map down. And, you know, it's just a lot more interactive stuff that they could have done, really. And this is from a company called Behavior Interactive, and all they want you to do is sit and repair their generators and open the exit gate. But yeah, that is my tier list. So just to recap real quick, we have Identity 5 in C tier, we have Propnight and Unplayable Trash tier, we have Ghostbusters in C tier, we have Resident Evil Resistance in A tier, we have Last Year in D tier, we have Evolve in A tier as well, we have Home Sweet Home Survive and Unplayable Trash tier, Death Garden and Unplayable Trash tier, Predator Hunting Grounds in C tier, Level 0 Unplayable Trash tier, Killer Clowns is in A tier, we have Friday the 13th in S tier, Evil Dead is in the one above all Asym game. Of course, it's where it belongs. We have TCM in S tier, and we have Dead by Daylight in B tier. So yeah, that is my tier list for the Asym games. I hope you all learned a lot about the Asym games and the lifespans of some of them, because I've been through the lifespans of like 4 Asym games now, and yeah, it's pretty comical, this genre. I would like to do more Asym stuff on this channel. Currently, I'm covering Marvel Rivals right now. I am a partner of that game and everything, so I don't really have the loyalty to it. You know, it's not like I have to exclusively stream Marvel Rivals, but there's just nothing really piquing my interest right now other than Rivals, so that's all I'm doing. But I hope you enjoyed this video. It's going to take me a long time to edit. You know, it's turned more into a podcast, but I appreciate you guys listening and watching as well. If you are listening to this like a podcast, thank you. I hope you're having fun doing whatever you're doing. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts on all the asyms and where you would put them on a tier list. I would like to know that. But yeah, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I will try and do more asym content on this channel as well. You know, I do have killer clowns that I do jump on now and then, but I'm mainly playing Marvel Rivals. So if you're into Marvel Rivals and hero shooters, I'm your guy, definitely. Anyways, bye guys, thanks for watching, take care, have a good one.